Look at you, hacker. A pathetic creature of meat and bone, panting and sweating as you run through my corridors. How can you challenge a perfect, immortal machine?
System Shock 2 is a game that's pretty difficult to sum up with words. It's a first-person science fiction role-playing horror shooter. It's first-person and there's shooting, but it's difficult to put it in the FPS corner. But it doesn't do nearly enough to be called a role-playing game either. It's a hybrid, and the two genres work extremely well together because System Shock 2 is easily one of the computer gaming industry's greatest accomplishments. The story begins with that old gaming chestnut, Amnesia. Yeah. You wake up on board the corporate-owned starship Von Braun making its maiden voyage and, you probably guessed it, something has gone terribly wrong. While it may sound a little cliché at this stage, and well, it does because it is, the story quickly turns into something that is both amazing and horrific. I don't want to give too much away, but it suffices to say that System Shock 2 has one of the best, and one of the best told, stories in computer game history, as well as one of, if not the, best computer game characters of all time. It seems the ship has been occupied by an alien infestation that calls itself the Mene. Alien worm things take humans as hosts and turn them into zombie-like drones known as hybrids, controlled by the Mene's hive consciousness. With most of the crew either dead or under control of the Mene, you, who were in a cryonic stasis at the time of the attack, find yourself alone against the alien infestation. While the game relies heavily on a strong sense of isolation, you aren't entirely alone during the game. At the beginning, you're contacted by another surviving member of the crew, who guides you through the game with audio messages, and it's through these, and through audio diary logs made by the former crew, that the story is driven. There are no cutscenes, there's no interactive dialogue or anything like that. Through the logs and messages you learn of characters you never meet, and you'll hear about events, the aftermath of which you witness as you play the game. The voice acting is one of the most impressive things about the game. All of the alien creatures in the game convey a perfect wrongness.
Your flesh will welcome us.
And the voice work on the audio logs is spectacular. As well as being a major device for advancing the main story, the logs also tell secondary stories, like the scientist who is captured by the Mene who, despite the certain knowledge that he will soon die, cannot help but be fascinated by the creatures, or the young lovers who want nothing more than to be together. These side stories do a great job of humanising these characters and of making the Von Braun seem like a real place which is home to real people. These logs also create tension by warning you of things to come, which can really set you on edge. Several other storytelling devices are used to keep the narrative moving. In addition to audio logs, you're also able to see ghosts of the dead crew members reliving parts of their lives. These scenes are often very emotional, and the ghosts are a great device as they allow you to witness these scenes without compromising the very powerful sense of isolation the game's atmosphere relies upon so heavily. The game also has a great way of telling the story passively through the environment. Blood splattered on walls and corpses or body parts hint at some of the terrible things that happened on the ship. At one point you'll come across a slumped corpse surrounded by bottles of booze, with a gun in one hand and a blood splatter on the wall behind him. It's easy to imagine him being so afraid that he drank himself into numbness and then blew his brains out. It's pretty powerful stuff. At the beginning of the game you'll select from one of three classes: the No Guts No Glory Marine, the technically skilled Navy, or the mysterious OSA with psionic powers. But the class you choose only has a fairly minor impact on your starting statistics. You can build almost any character you like as the game progresses, selecting from a variety of statistics in the vein of traditional role-playing games, such as strength, which increases your melee power and inventory size, or agility, which increases your running speed. As well as statistics, you'll have weapon skills, technical skills, and psionic abilities to think about. Improving your weapon skills will increase the amount of damage you can cause with certain weapons, but because some weapons have prerequisite skill levels, you won't be able to master, or probably even use, all of the game's weapons. Your technical skills are things like hacking, which can be used to manipulate electronic devices, or weapons maintenance, which will help keep your weapons in good condition. The psionic abilities are like a science fiction version of spells, and they range from telekinesis to life leeching from enemies. You can use them as support abilities or create a character based entirely around psi stuff, and these abilities really separate System Shock 2 from traditional first-person shooters. Because all of your stats and skills are bought with the same experience points, everything is a trade-off. If you work on psi abilities, you'll have to make a lot of sacrifices elsewhere. If you want to improve your hacking skill, you may have to sacrifice some agility or weapons maintenance. You're free to build your character any way you like, but you'll have difficult choices to make. Your character is upgraded through the experimental, cybernetic interface your character has had installed, and there's only so many upgrades you can make. Other role-playing elements include an inventory where you can carry various items ranging from cigarettes to potted plants, and a currency known as nanites can be used to buy items from vending machines, but nanites can also be spent at medical devices when you die, or are spent when you make an attempt at hacking something. Hacking is a skill that lets you get through locked doors and lets you get into locked containers, but you can also disable the ship's security system with hacking, and you can get gun turrets on your side by hacking them, but only if you have sufficient skill. This means someone with a high hack skill may find himself with more resources or find himself fighting fewer enemies. System Shock 2 has a strong focus on horror, but it doesn't rely on traditional horror mechanics like enemies jumping out of closets or through windows. In fact, the game does almost the opposite. You'll often be able to hear enemies before you can see them, which puts you in a position where you'll realise that you have no choice but to face them, which can be pretty awful. Horrors wait ahead and there's nothing you can do about it. But you aren't simply killing alien baddies. You're killing the former crew members, the very people you're listening to on the audio logs. The audio logs really humanise these enemies, and even as you fight them, it's clear that they still retain some of their humanity as they tell you to run away or beg you to kill them. It's pretty horrific to imagine them being trapped inside their own bodies, their consciousness pushed aside by something else. There are also quite scarce resources, which is a bit of a horror staple, but health is in fairly plentiful supply. It's ammunition that isn't. This means that you often need to choose your shots with care, and that is compounded by the way weapon quality degrades with use, and they eventually even break. This is a clear and quite annoying contrivance which, for some reason, isn't even explained in the game. But what it means for gameplay is you'll often want to conserve both ammunition and the condition of your weapons, which means you're mostly reduced to using melee weapons to kill enemies. And this gives the combat a visceral and brutal feeling. Melee fighting always gives a stronger sense that you're actually fighting for your life, which especially works well as the gunplay isn't particularly good. The melee fighting enhances the horror, and the horror is the driving force behind the entire game. It's a bit of an artificial contrivance, but it has a positive impact on the gameplay. The game also uses long, narrow corridors, and the angles of the architecture often make the game feel very claustrophobic. And the ship's security system under the control of the MENA, which includes cameras and gun turrets, really makes it feel like the ship itself is somehow your enemy. If everything I've said so far makes Shock 2 seem pretty complicated and even confusing, it is. System Shock 2 can be a very tough game to get your head around at first. You're given access to a wide variety of skills and statistics, but you aren't given much tuition on how to build your character. You're given plenty of weapons, but it may not become clear until it's too late that you need to conserve them and your ammunition for the latter stages of the game. But this is the game's only real flaw. System Shock 2 just has everything. Great atmosphere, an amazing and amazingly well told story, great voice work and written dialogue, a depth of complexity and challenge that will appeal to veteran gamers while being just accessible enough for beginners, and perhaps the finest horror any game has ever managed. System Shock 2 is, in short, one of the computer gaming industry's greatest accomplishments.
The time is 16:30. Autopsy subject A. Watson. Now we're going to make the first incision in